if you can do a good job delivering online now, it'd be a job saver, I reckon.
By the way, I just need to tell people this has been recorded just for the people who wanted to be here but couldn't be here. Is that right?
Okay, I'll shut up now. Cut out my part everywhere I spoke.
Yeah. And don't say or bother. Right, we just got a couple more people. Just before we start, I don't know if people have seen there's group emails going around the university, should be getting to everyone, about these Adobe webinar things going on. If you don't get an email sent from a sort of generic CQU address, let me know, because they're running some what look like really interesting webinars. And
I saw those this morning and they do look quite good, but the ones I want clash with other meetings, which is really annoying.
Yeah, I reckon they're going to put more and more of these on.
What are they?
Yeah, I'm just checking because that doesn't ring a bell for me.
It arrived about 10 o'clock today. It was from Michelle Roberts.
Oh, and what do they do?
It's just, I think they're run by Adobe, or they're not. I don't know if they're CQU made, but they're on various bits of software. So one that could interest you, Rebecca, is there's this real-time animation software.
Yeah, I don't have that. Can you forward it on to me, please, Paul? I don't have that.
Yeah, and same for you, Nathan?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'll send it out to our group, actually. Oh, I'm promising a lot here. My skills aren't.
I hope they film them, because that's the one I'd like to go to, but I've got a staff meeting at 3 on that day, exactly the same time.
Yeah, maybe we could ask them to record and then distribute. I'm sure, like, this is the second time they're running it. I reckon they'll keep running it, because I reckon they'll be putting a lot of investment in staff development on video.
Mm.
The good thing is I can multitask. What was I saying? Right, okay, it's coming.
Hey, Chris.
How's it going?
Good, good.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Paul. That lass that we were talking about before, she may not be able to join in term 2 because she needs prerequisites, I believe.
Ah, no problem.
But anyway, she's really keen. She wants to get started on everything.
Fantastic. Oh, I've just got you on camera. Look at you.
Yes, I like the Milky Way.
Did we stick you on a rocket and send you up as part of our change plan?
It's nighttime in Emu Park. Yeah, winter is coming as well.
That looks fabulous. That's really well done.
Yeah, Zoom has that facility now, so you can put any photo that you've got in your library as a backdrop, but it tends to kind of fade in and out, and if you get...
you look like E.T.
Yeah.
Rebecca, hi, Tom.
Come in peace.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Yeah,
Hi.
Rebecca tried the green screen, and she managed to make herself disappear.
Well, she can't wear green. That's the problem.
Yeah. That's the number one, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't wear green. She also had green covering her head, so I think it might have been
green makeup.
Yeah, I put a green sheet over my head. It was the only green thing I had.
Yeah. That doesn't sound accidental, does it? Okay, let's start. There's a good number of us here, so good to see you all. I know it's a really shitty time right now. It's stressful for lots of reasons, so I really appreciate you all coming along today. And Rebecca was saying it's probably a really good time for us to have this group and start setting this group up, given one of the things the university is thinking about is now every university is online. Quite a few universities are probably going to stay online after all of this is over. Probably a lot of it's going to stay online. And before we might have thought ourselves at the cutting edge and at the front foot in terms of audio-visual stuff online. In a year's time, if we're not careful, we're just going to be in the pack, you know? So I think there might be a lot of focus on audio-visual stuff. And I've got a bit of news. I was asked to join a university working group that's trying to develop it's called I forget the name of it. It's a video planning group to try and develop an overall framework for the university. It's just starting, and it's going to feed into this, you know, CQU Renew, which is now CQU Renew plus complete restructure, you know. So which is good to have one of us on it, so I can, if there are things, you know, if there's a conversation that we wish would be heard more broadly outside of our group and more broader than just in our psychology group, I can channel us into them. So it gives us a little communication route into the central decision making. I don't know whether they'll listen to this group or not, but I shouldn't have said that. By the way, I'm recording this. And the other thing is that I'll feed back on what's happening in that group to just give us a bit of a head start in terms of where the university might be heading. So
Can I put in my 2 cents worth, Paul?
Absolutely.
You know how well my small group of students have done, and when I was doing the Indigenous tutoring, how well they were doing right from the start. I was paying for that study.com for years. I paid for it myself for my students. God knows how much money they are making. They are brilliant. And you have to pay. I was paying a couple of years ago over $100 a month, and it'd give me up to 200 students. I had to stop it when I went to Social Foundations because it was like 399 students signed up, and I'd have to pay the double. That all it does is put out short videos, and it looks like a lot of them are PhD students, and they'll describe, like in 10 minutes, one aspect. They do all different disciplines, not just psychology, and I think they give out like accreditations and that as well now. They must be making a fortune, and it's just a little, it goes in between. If you look it up, it'll have a little cartoon and someone standing in front talking.
Have you ever wondered
and it's so amazing. I've used that. I've used YouTube, the free 2-minute neuroscience for your classes, Chris. I've always shown them that. And if I've always wanted to do that, and these guys are just selling it. Yeah, like I said, God knows how much they're making. Hang on, I'll move away from the guys. Who's doing his
How do you go about finding an answer to a puzzling question?
If we could do that, and I know people in Townsville know how well these small groups of students here do.
What do you do?
And the people in Townsville also know it's not because of me. I'm more than a bit of a dummy. But those things work so well, and with my Indigenous students, they love them. And they are paying for them themselves now, since I'm not doing that tutoring. So
we all have our own ways that we
I can't think of a better selling point than to look at that. And like Chris, like the crash course ones, how popular are they? You use them, don't you?
Yeah. So, I mean, those 3 sources, well, I'm going to throw in Khan Academy as well, although the videos aren't quite as capturing. But, yeah, they're really great sources to supplement what we provide. And I guess what you're talking about is maybe producing that quality of material as we go forward, and that would be great as well. I guess I'm going to throw my 2 cents worth also. I always run live whenever I can because I prefer to see people, even if it's on screen like this. And I routinely say to people, well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer, live or? And there's still always a large number of folks who still prefer just doing what we're doing. They may not interact, but there's that sense of presence. There's a sense of being in the moment. So when you go forward with this group, Paul, I suspect that there's room for the recordings and the really high quality stuff, but there's also room for live productions as well. And whether that take this form or a webinar form, I'm not sure.
Can I just quickly say again, I'm going to hijack this. Chris, for years and years, I imagine you get this feedback. All of my students absolutely love your classes because you tell a story, because you've worked in there. And even I can't get that out of my brain about the fireman and the smell of bacon smells like a burning body. You've traumatized me for that. But everybody loves your classes because you tell a story. So I've been listening to students whinge forever about how much they hate live lectures, but they don't hate yours because it's interesting and you've got a story, you put it into context.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I've traumatized you. I've succeeded in my mission then.
So, yeah, thanks.
I guess, death by PowerPoint, there's nothing more painful. And I do attend lectures that are recorded, and I do attend lectures that are live sometimes. And there's nothing better than a great story. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be, your own story. It can be a story you borrowed from somebody else, or it can be a story you've read about. So the way to make live lectures enjoyable is to tell those stories which illustrate the point, rather than just simply reading from the PowerPoint slides. And I know Paul's not a great fan of PowerPoints at the best of time.
Yeah, study.com does that too. I always remember they were learning about groupthink, and study.com talked about the shuttle disaster, and they also do that. They'll put it into context like you do with a story, and it makes it interesting.
I think Rebecca, what you're describing is really important. I think that kind of, maybe it's thinking about how we can build up assets and how the university can build up those assets, like really good videos and audio and all the rest of it that we can use, that can be shared, not just used within a unit, but shared between us in terms of borrowed and adapted and so on. I think that's really good. And Chris, I think you make a really good point about live, not neglecting live broadcast. I think the thing that's important about live that we can lose if we just focus on the pre-recorded stuff is that the whole learning process falls apart unless it's a social interaction. Learning is a social interaction, and it's very difficult to create a social interaction in a non-synchronous space, where people aren't all together at the same time, all able to engage in a discussion live. And also I think it's important because the best learning happens when we're making mistakes. And if it's not live, there's a tendency for us and students to overthink things and then communicate, rather than communicate a little more spontaneously to find out where their assumptions are wrong. They can lose the opportunity to make mistakes when they're thinking on their feet. And I think that can be a really important thing. And Chris, maybe something that we can look into is there's all of this software that the uni's not talking about, which sits in between the camera and the recorder and can overlay graphics. So at the moment, we just rely on lecture theatres with PowerPoint up and a separate recording of the PowerPoint slides that sit in a box as we're doing our live lecture. And there's so much more we can do. We can have, at the moment, people are going crazy with this on video conferencing because there's software you can use that turns you into a potato.
You use in Zoom, it's going to layer some filters over there. So once it's ready to go, you just click what you want and boom, I'm a potato again, and we can run our meeting this way.
And things like that. So there's all this sort of visual graphic stuff. But we could
need software to do that with me, Paul. It just happens automatically.
Oh, you're not using it, you mean? No one wanted to. No, don't be silly. No, if you were a potato, it'd be a King Edward, which is the prime potato, the king of potatoes. Anyway, there's all of this software, so maybe we could start looking into that, exploring that, and seeing what's out there that can do those things on, like having graphics come up. Just before I go back into my shell, just the other thing I'm picking up on, just to feed into the discussion what was discussed at this working group, video framework working group. It was really interesting that something everyone said, including me, is, well, we're obviously not after a Hollywood production. But afterwards, I was thinking, actually, maybe we should. What is a Hollywood production? And there are two things. Everyone also mentioned TED Talks. You know, everyone just used TED Talks as the, you know, the ideal example of if you're going to give a lecture, how to do it. And I looked at the video production manual of TED Talks and how they tell people how they set up their video. And one thing they insist on is that people shoot in 24 frames a second, which is what it makes everything blurry. Like at the moment, you can still see all of my fingers. But if I was in a slower frame rate, there'd be fewer frames and it would be blurry. It would be like that. And that's the cinema look. And the other thing about Hollywood production, aside from the lots of money and, you know, Brad Pitt and all the rest of it, is it's all storytelling. It's just storytelling. So I think that feeds in. I think we need maybe to push back on the uni and say we are actually after Hollywood, but we're after Hollywood in terms of video as a medium for telling stories.
Well, can I comment on that, Paul, because it relates to, I think, Nathan's video from last time. So Nathan's video was pretty minimal, the plant and the background and then just him, but it became really interesting because of the story he was telling, and you knew, oh, he's going to get somewhere, and I want to hear the end of this, even though I thought I'm just going to look at it for the meeting. But in the end, I watched the whole video because I wanted to hear what the final part of the story was and how it turned out for this person.
Yeah, I think I don't really know what I'm doing when I'm telling stories, but I guess it's an interesting thing, maybe even in the group, to talk about what are the key attributes that we need to have in our storytelling. Because I often accidentally tell stories, but I'm not really necessarily aware of how I'm doing that. And I think it's hugely powerful, and probably, yeah, even that TED Talk format, a lot of it is storytelling.
Yeah, but there's also, you can tell that same story in a very unengaging way. So, and I think part of it is we're just the conduit. We want to get the information to them. We want to make sure that they learn in a proper way, but we're just the conduit of the story. But there's a way to tell a story, but there's also a way to not tell a story.
So part of it, I think, is probably a pacing thing as well, isn't it? It's keeping the suspense going and also making sure that you're interested in it as well. But I think it is that pacing that's quite important.
I guess one of the key things with stories, and this has been shown in research as well, and the stories that people remember is that they've got an emotional component. So they make people feel sad, or they make people feel frightened, or they make people feel like, you know, they're laughing, you know. So if there's a reasonable emotional component running through the story, it's usually going to be received and remembered, perhaps more importantly. Now, the catch is that sometimes you can sell. I used to teach in 5th year, and I remember a student come out saying, "Oh, that story you told was really great last week, but I can't remember the point." So in other words, they can't remember what the story was really meant to illustrate. So there's a danger in that the story takes over the content of the lecture. But yeah, if there's an emotional underpinning to it, it'll usually be received and remembered.
I think we're all spot on with this. And I think it's about that caring what happens, isn't it? Like a good story often has a character for whom you care what happens to them, you know, and that's where you get pulled in. Like we might not care what happens to the theory of cognitive dissonance, you know, who cares if the cognitive dissonance hits on hard times, you know, but we might care about the person who came up with the theory and then everyone thought he was an idiot and his dog left him, and then someone discovered him as a tramp and then became the most famous psychologist in the world, you know. People get, you know, they start caring what happens to that person, and start caring about the theory in return. But I agree with you, Chris, as well, that sometimes the story can become more important than the intended meaning.
That's where we might lose it unless we have the tutorials. With cognitive dissonance, I always say to students, have you ever been on a diet? and then thought, yeah, someone's got pizza, and you'll think, oh, you know, I'll just have this one piece, or I'll start on Monday. And when we go around the room and talk about it, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talk about what happened to everybody during the floods here, that just helps them learn so much, but that'll be lost unless we do it. You know, I always wanted to have Zoom, like for me, a separate lecture, like a tutorial, and then pre-recorded. But is there any way that we can bring that? Because you know how if you can so much psychology, if not all of it, you can just relate to yourself, and then you think about it and you remember it. What do you think about that, Paul?
No, I think you're right. I think you're right there. How about Emma? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you can get some sort of personal connection or some sort of personal investment from the students in the concepts that we're trying to teach them, and I guess that's probably harder or easier depending on what the content is, I think. But if they can care about something, or if they can relate to something, then I think that's a way to get it stuck into their brains, maybe.
Yeah, I think absolutely. That the uni's talking about personalization of learning as well. I mean, that's that feeling when people are online that they can relate to it at a personal level. You know, like Rebecca's describing, you know, you kind of weave the ideas into the story of someone's life and using examples from people's lives.
Well, one thing, and it's just I find it the dumbest, silliest trick that I use, but students really gravitate towards it. So I teach assessment as well. So I often have to talk about hypothetical cases or what can happen in sessions. But for some reason, and this is what I think I read it somewhere, I give people very funny names from funny people, and students always remember that. So I know this week there was something and I called the person Paul Anka, but then every student immediately comes back the next week, oh, do you know that Paul Anka story? And they know what it's about. And I think it relates to what Chris said, because I do it with a bit of humor, and everybody knows the name, so they think it's funny that I put that name on the client. And they gravitate to that as well. So it helps their memory, but it also helps that emotional side.
Absolutely. This is a discussion we're having, which I think is going in a great direction, but not the one intended. But I'm happy for it to carry on that way. Nathan and Rebecca nicely volunteered to talk more about their videos, and we are talking a bit about Nathan's in terms of, and it's something, this is why it's so good to have that peer review process, I think, is that picking up those things about each other's work. And you're right, Nathan's work is very much about storytelling. I mean, he's telling a story, and even if you didn't know that's what you were doing, Nathan, that's what you were doing. And I think it's really good to pick up on these things. So I think we could either just carry on where we're going with this discussion, or we could go back and then think about those videos some more and just hear from Nathan and Rebecca about the software they used, how long it took them to do it. Would they ever do it again, given now what they know now? And did their dog leave them in the process? Things like that. So either we just carry on talking, or we start going, oh God, what have I done? I've just completely overcomplicated this now.
Well, we probably should talk about what was on the agenda, so to speak. And I guess my question for Nathan, and did it take a lot of time? Do you think there's this steep learning curve of what you do? And is it something that will speed up the more you do it? Or is it always just going to take a hell of a lot of time?
I think the more you do, the better you certainly get at it. So I'm about to go into, well, for second semester, I'll be doing a whole brand new lot, and I think my approach to doing them, I'm a lot more competent at them now. I know what I'm doing, and it probably takes the same time, but I'm probably putting more into the videos now. So before it was probably me just standing in front of a camera talking. Now I'm adding graphics into the videos and things like that as well. So it becomes, I think, a better production for the students. So probably takes the same time, but I've gotten better at being able to deliver in the video, but also in being able to add more technical aspects to the video as well. The only other thing I thought, just I guess maybe combining what we're talking about now is, maybe that's a good challenge for all of us through this process, is to try and, we can review each other's work and look at trying to implement that storytelling into our videos that we produce for maybe the coming semester.
And I guess the sharing of the stories as well. We might have a little story bank, so to speak, but whether they're MP3 files or written stories.
Yes.
Just a point that kind of strikes me as you're talking is that the quality of your audio is really good. And I remember talking to a colleague who's doing some recordings for the Centre for Professional Development, told just use Zoom. But of course, when you record on Zoom, there's always this bit of an echo. It's not ideal by any means. And partly we also tend to just use whatever microphones on our laptop, yeah? But I noticed that Paul's got a pop filter. You've got this kind of fancy USB mic just sticking out. There's another USB mic. I tend to like to use my headset because it's even though it's not ideal, not as good as your microphones, but it underscores to me the importance of not only having kind of good video quality, but good audio quality, more importantly, maybe even than the video. Because if the student can't hear what's being said, or it's unclear, or it's kind of raspy or whatever, there's a lot of background noise, it's just going to turn them off. So the quality of audio is really key.
I don't think it's a maybe, Chris. I think it's a certainty that audio is better. There's this saying that audio can save poor quality video, but poor quality audio, no, flip that around. But good quality video cannot rescue poor quality audio. I think you're absolutely right. The other thing I got from what Nathan was, I think it'd be good to do the sharing of the storytelling, see how we're all, whether we're doing it, each of us are doing it, and then sharing that. And so it's not so much focus on the visuals, but actually having that focus on the storytelling element. The other thing I think that your first question pointed to something we might also do is to share our workflow. So it's not just a case, we're kind of doing that in discussion. So it's not just a case of Rebecca and Nathan sharing their video, but they kind of show the workflow. Like I did A, then B, then C, then D, then E. And then we can look at it to see, I actually do that. I do steps B and C together because I do this other thing, and see if there are ways that we can speed up our workflows. Because it's something you kind of learn as you go along, that actually that thing that took you 20 minutes can actually only needs to take you 5 minutes if you just click that button over there,
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. Once you learn how to do it, you save yourself an enormous amount of time. Otherwise, if you're sitting there, tinkering away and trying to work out how to do something, it can take a very, very long time just to learn how to, simply just paste a graphic into a video sometimes. And I completely agree about the sound. Paul's been at me for a while now about the sound in my videos, and I think the sound in my videos is probably okay, but as he would say, it can be a lot better. So, but basically, all my videos have been filmed on my phone, and that's been the sound as well. It's been recorded on the phone. I did do one the other day, and I actually meant to record it on the microphone, but I didn't have the microphone selected on the computer, so I had to still use the sound on my phone. But Paul had suggested to basically record the video, but also to have a microphone that records the sound and then add the tracks together. I think probably maybe where that starts to get technical is that if you're not necessarily recording chunks of the video together, if you're recording it in small increments, it could be easy for the sound and picture to get a little bit out of sync. But if you're doing, for example, 4 or 5 minute segments or chunks, then I think that'll probably be a pretty safe way to just combine the processes together.
There's a really quick way on that work, again, with that workflow, the syncing. There's that thing where you go, sorry, Emma, you've got headphones on, you're going to kill me, and Chris, on the video, and then you get that on the audio track. If you're recording it separately, then it's easy to sync it up. and then you can stick them together, and it doesn't matter how many times you cut your video, it all sticks together. But I think Chris has pointed out something really useful, and something both Emma and Chris are doing, and I don't know if Rebecca is, but the headsets are actually really, don't kill me, Nathan, because I know I encourage you to blow $100 on your microphone, but the headphones that we get from our uni are actually a lot better. It's a lot better to use that than the microphone on our laptop. I want to bring Rebecca in largely so we can all giggle when we hear the quality of her audio, but also because I'd like to hear, Rebecca, about how you created your animation, and the same question Chris asked Nathan about how long did that take you?
It took me ages, but you know how good I am at IT stuff. One of them took me about a week over the break. So a normal person, it takes a while, but yeah, probably nowhere near as long as it takes me. You can do a voice. I'm going to try it as well. My son's got a proper microphone. I'll use that. You can put a voiceover on the cartoons.
Can I ask Rebecca, when you say it took you about a week, is that because you had to learn how to do it, or is that?
Yeah, no, it was just me. Yeah, it probably would have taken Paul a couple of hours. I was just YouTubing it and trying to figure out how to use it, and yeah, it's just, I'm useless. So, but I would say it would take, I don't know, maybe a day. Depends how long it wants to be, you want it to be, and the Toonly is very user-friendly. But still, someone else.
Rebecca, remind us about how many, this was an animation, one of your animations was on how to do a piece of assessment, and remind us how many views you got for that piece of animation that you put together.
They rolled it over for the third term. Last time I looked, it was like 800 and something.
A lot more than there are students on the unit, actually. I think you're doing yourself a disservice there, because you had about 800 when there were only, 400 in the class. I mean, one thing, 400 people in the class, I mean, I'm lucky if I get 10 people in the class of 100 to actually watch anything I do. So even if every single member of the class watched it, which would be miraculous, you've got other people interested in it too. And I think that's just extraordinary.
The students really did like it, and I'm sure I told you, Paul, I did like at least an hour Zoom session, recorded and explained the entire assessment, and I still had people, that's why I made it. It was 6 minutes, and I just made a 6-minute one instead of a whole hour explaining it. And then I had about 10 people after I put it up say, oh, I get it now. And it was such a dodgy thing. I've got spelling mistakes, the music's shocking. But then all the people are saying, and I got it in the feedback too, a couple of people said they loved the video. So I don't know what the go is, but it did go over really well.
And how did you make that? What program was it that you used for that one?
The first ones, because I've made a few. For assessment one, I used Animaker. It was just free, but it only goes for a few minutes. The one I'm using now that I bought is called Toonly.
Thank you. I'll have a look at those. I'm quite interested in learning how to do this, so I might have a look at those and have a bit of a play around with it.
It could be interesting to run an animation workshop and just, people who are doing this stuff showing us how to do it, but not losing the focus on the live and pre-recorded, because there are things that you can, once we get that software, or have a discussion about the software that does it, you can have characters come up, animated characters come up, I'll just show you something really briefly. Oh, Jesus, I'm not going to be able to do this. Look, if this doesn't work, it's your fault, okay? Or it's Zoom's fault. Zoom has got a technical problem, nothing to do with me. Okay, I'm going to share screen and just show you an overlay of animations, which we could do for both live and pre-recorded. And there's one bit where actually both the overlays are animations. Let me just do, hold on, right. Oh God, can you see a big picture of me looking a little gormless? You're worried about saying yes. Okay. So this is just an intro to a video. Today too. All that makes sense. We're going to cram a lot in, but it's not going to be that. Oops. Sorry. Now the web page is also on our Moodle page. Again, it's under Assessment 1 Resources in the Assessment tab that tells you how to record and how to let your interviewee record as well. Because when you set up a Zoom meeting, you've got to... So those are just animations layered over the video, which you can do in pre-recorded, and there are gizmos that allow you to do that in live broadcast as well. So we could have a focus on animation, both the full, looking at how we can do, because I think, Rebecca, you were actually doing what Nathan was doing. You were also doing storytelling because you had people, you had cartoon characters showing, illustrating, and that's storytelling. That's having characters doing something. So I think you were doing that. But we could also think about animation in terms of graphics we can use, like things to overlay on our videos, both for the live and pre-recorded.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could do that in one of the future meetings. It'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I'd love that. I was watching yours where you had a little animation character, Paula. It's awesome.
Apply some magic dust. I'm losing my credibility as an academic now. So there they are. I think you're doing it better because you're using software that you can get into. I mean, it took you a long time to learn it and do it. My stuff took me 2-3 years and I'm still frustrated by it. It's really technical software. I think the sort of software you're just using, but also Nathan, I think you're valuable, partly because you're doing it on your phone. You weren't a mug like me and went out and bought a overly priced camera. You're doing it on your phone, but you're also using Camtasia, which is software that you can add those animations on top of your text. When your text comes up, your text overlays, they're animated pieces of text. So you're using animation too. So I think it might be interesting to see you, Rebecca, and you, Nathan, splicing your work together in a way.
Yeah, I'd love it if Nathan could show us how he's done his videos in Camtasia, because I don't know what to do.
Yeah, happy to do that.
We have another agenda for another meeting.
I think as well, even like some of those graphics that you use, Paul, are quite interesting. Even the idea of just having the screen there that you can then paste, whether it be slides into or other images, and it's a nice balance between, still providing slides or different parts that you want students to be able to see in the video rather than just simply talking.
Maybe this comes back to where we started the discussion with Rebecca about thinking about assets. Maybe it's, and also ties in with that thing. I mean, the biggest worry, and Chris nailed it, like how long did that take? These things take an awful lot of time, but actually some of us are quicker than others at different things. Like Rebecca's really quick now with the animation stuff. I mean, it would take all of us so much longer. Nathan's really good now with the Camtasia stuff and setting up his recording. There might be things that we can do to help each other out. So if people are interested in those, I think I sent that bottom third graphic. Like rather than, what we could do is we could do like a showcase, show people how we did it, but then also offer to people to do it for them. You know, if it's one of those things where we can make something for people, but we can also show people how to make it themselves. And that way, if people have time, they can do it themselves. But if they don't have time but still like it, there might be ways that people in our team can do it for them.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, happy to do that. I mean, and even if there's a handful of, I think like the animations that you sent through, Paul, if there's just some basic things like that we can all use and drag into videos or whatever types of process we go with it, I think it just sharpens up whatever form of production that we use.
Fantastic. The other thing, I don't want to draw the discussion to a conclusion too quickly. We've still got 15 minutes. It would be nice to bring in the work of Emma, Chris, and Tom as well, just to get a sense of where, you know, what you're doing. So I think we might have an agenda for 2 meetings set up. Maybe one about how, you know, we could do animation, carrying on from what Nathan and Rebecca are doing. So we could maybe do that in the meeting after the next one. And for our next meeting, maybe we could just showcase a bit of some of the work of either Emma, Chris, or Tom, or from all of you, so we can give you feedback on what you're doing. And as well,
I wanted to actually share a video, Paul, because I think it's absolutely horrible. So I teach I teach assessment. So I think my biggest restriction is that all these psychological assessments are very expensive, and as such, the copyright on them is very strict. So even in my online lectures, there's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to show. And so students can't see it until residential school, when they only have a day and a half to practice these assessments. But I made a video earlier in the year with an actual client. We didn't put the client in the picture. The reason why I wanted to share it and why I think it's horrible is because the video is almost 1 hour of me just doing this assessment. And in the meanwhile, I've got text coming through it, I've got the score form there, but I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of improvements that can be made. So I'd be more than happy to share it, because I think I need a bit of input of how do I make this a lot better.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think we can show our best bits and our worst bits. You know, I don't, maybe we shouldn't get locked into that. Show us your best work. I think it'd be as useful. I've got some clangers. Jesus, I've got a video that went on for almost 2 hours. I was really enjoying myself. Just awful. But I think we should share clangers as well.
I was trying to video record the other day. Timmy was doing it, and then I couldn't. I started laughing, and then I had to get him to leave, and then I just sat there like a mental person and laughed at myself in a video for about 20 minutes and had to stop.
I know exactly I know exactly that feeling. Emma, I think if next session we've got Tom, so we can have a damn good laugh at, we could also, I don't know if Emma or Chris want to bring anything in as well. I mean, there's no pressure.
I mean, mine are literally, because I'm really new to all this, it's just me speaking over slides, really, for like 20 minutes, or doing like a piece to camera, you know, really brief intro to what we're going to be doing that week. But I'm happy to share bits and pieces if people find that useful. But I think they're pretty crap, because it's literally just me speaking over a slideshow.
The funny thing is, out of all of us, though we don't know Rebecca's framing of her shot, you probably got the best, apart from, Crawford, Jesus, Chris. Of course, yours is a better shot, but we're talking about earthly environments. You've got a really good eye for setting up a screenshot. You've got the classic screenshot set up there.
I need to make myself look like I'm scholarly, I think.
It works.
It's all just fiction. It's just crime fiction, Dexter. So it's just that. It's not.
Put on a fancy hat or something.
Yeah.
And Chris, I'd love to see something. I know Rebecca is a big fan of yours. blames
One
you
of the
for-
things I've been experimenting with lately is, like, if you're talking, say, the visual pathways in the brain, I've got a little drawing pad now. So I take people through and just go step by step through the drawing pad. You know, this is where it begins, and this is where it ends, and these are the sort of the pathways in between. So that seems to be an interesting way of presenting. So I'm not talking to a slide, I'm talking to a drawing and I'm not very good at drawing, I've got to say. But I mean, students still seem to relate to it, and it doesn't need to be ideal because the pathways are kind of just pathways. So I could show you what I'm doing there.
Can I ask, Chris, I just ordered a Wacom drawing pad. Which one do you use?
I'm actually using the XP Pen Pro. So
Okay.
the XP, and this is a drawing screen. So it actually is like a little monitor. And the beauty of the XP Pen Pro is that it's cheap and it's just as good. I mean, this is it here. And so I don't know whether you can see that very well, but probably not at all. I'm disappearing. But yeah, and that's, you actually draw on the screen. So with the Waco pads, you know, you're kind of you're looking at the screen, but you're drawing down here kind of thing. So I like the XP Pen. Chinese, but really robust, and they get great reviews, and I can see why. And it's like having a spare screen for that matter.
Hey, Paul, could I just ask one more question? I've got to take off for a shoot in a minute. What are your thoughts? I know it's extra work, but last time I was saying how I did that lecture in Anne's class, and it's so much more interesting, like if there's two of you talking. I know that's a lot of work, but I also think once these videos are done, as long as we don't talk about the pandemic or anything, we don't add in anything topical. I don't know, it really flowed when there was a couple of people there discussing it. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on. I think one thing that people find really engaging is seeing people in a conversation, because they kind of see how what's interesting is not just what they're saying, but how they bounce off each other. And I think that can be really interesting. And I think it's something we could actually do as a group. I mean, if later down the line, for example, we wanted to have a go at seeing what it would be like to have a teaching video where you have 4-6 numbskulls like us all giving our own interpretation of a particular theory or something, or trying to explain what a standard deviation is or something, you know, that could be a teaching asset that can sit across a number of units. We could try it. You know, we could just say, let's pick a topic. Let's have a time limit of 20 minutes or something. And let's tell each other what we think a thing means, or the best way of explaining something. We could also just, I'm recording this, so I could pop this up on YouTube. I could make it unlisted so that you can all see. So we could just see how it looks like when we're in conversation. Because I'll think the video is great, because I'll just be absorbed by my own presence and thinking how gorgeous I look. But it might be interesting to see what this looks like, having that headspace of thinking, would that work as a teaching video, having a group of academics discussing a topic? I just want a couple of things. I know we've got to finish, and you might have to go a little bit early, Rebecca, but just the thing you're doing, Chris, I think that might actually be a session on of itself, because there's this thing that I don't know if you know of that really lit up the online learning community. There's this bit of tech, which is a bit more expensive than what you're using, but I love what you're using, where people write on a piece of glass in front of them, and the tech mirrors the text so it comes out the right way. It's a really interesting bit of kit, and it costs a bit of money, but you can actually, if you've got someone who knows DIY, they can actually make this thing. So you're actually talking to camera like this, and you're writing on a piece of glass that's in front of the camera, and it comes out the right way, which sounds an easy thing to do, but it's actually a complicated thing to do. But I think that what you're doing is actually cutting edge stuff, because people are now starting to use that, and fascinated by the way something like a high-tech version of the chalk and blackboard actually turns out to be a really engaging way of teaching. People love seeing people draw.
Khan Academy does stats, but you can't see the people. It's just them writing like on a glass board.
I think it sounds really cool. Mm.
We've got free meetings set up. Our group could last longer than the financial reserves of the university. So we've got 3 months of meetings set up. Does that sound like a good strategy? Say next week, if Tom and Emma want to share their work, and we completely understand why you're sharing it. You know, Emma, you're dissatisfied with it and you're coming here, but maybe we can give ideas. Actually, you might be surprised at what you're doing well. And Tom, again, you might be surprised what you're doing well. But it would be nice to bring us down to the level we're actually all working at. And the meeting after that, maybe Chris with drawing, and then after that, Nathan and Rebecca about bringing animation and vlogging styles together. Does that sound a good strategy for now?
Yep. Sounds good, provided we're still employed.
Exactly. But we'll find a suitable replacement, don't worry.
Irreplaceable, Paul, you're irreplaceable.
Oh yeah, sorry, I meant to say that. That's what I meant to say, wasn't it? We'll all be here. We'll be fine. We're in psychology. You know, the world around us is mad. They need us more than ever. Thanks, everybody. I'll send you a link to the recording. I'll send it out to our whole group because there are people who wanted to be here today but couldn't be here. And thanks, everyone. I'm sorry I talked for too long. Again,
Really useful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to
See you
talk.
later.
Bye.
Yeah, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, darling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.